How you doing? How's everything going?
Good. Uh, right now, got a neighbor upstairs deciding to run laps in his apartment. That's fine. It's very exciting.
Oh, run laps upstairs. Well, are you in are you in quarantine?
No, I did go out. I was traveling this past weekend, so I am just staying away from the office as much as possible. But I don't, no symptoms or anything like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you guys just been working remotely the most of the time?
I've been pretty much in and out. We got a new office a couple of weeks ago. We were working, so we're based in Nashville, and we were working a dead middle of downtown in a pretty big building, probably a top five, I don't know, maybe six tallest buildings in Nashville, which isn't like massive, but there's still a bunch of people there. And so we got out of that and moved into a much smaller place where we have like a ton more room. So I don't even sit near, maybe 8 feet next to the closest person in the new office. So, yeah, it's been nice. We just finished setting up our studio, kind of getting settled in. It's been nice.
Nice. I've never been to Nashville. It seems like a really cool place. Is it, if it's crypto friendly at all or?
Yeah, Tennessee's been great. So there's we're here. A bunch of the Monero folks are here too. Oddly
Nice.
enough. And we've worked with a law firm here, Frost Brown Todd, on a number of the projects that we have, who ended up building a cryptocurrency specific practice out of our business, which has been pretty neat. So there's definitely a pretty good contingency here. It was a little bit different a couple of years ago, but I think that's probably the same for everybody. I don't think that's a Nashville specific thing, but a lot of money here. There's, oddly enough, even down the street, there was a team that was looking to open up a private club specifically for people interested in and involved in cryptocurrencies.
Mm-hmm.
The two guys who were starting it were younger guys who were coming from Texas, where their family had built an oil specific private club. And so they saw the same kind of thing, but they came to Tennessee to do that, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Is there oil in Tennessee or like what was the point?
No oil. No, they just they were oil guys, or their family were oil people, and they moved to Tennessee to try to scout out some new opportunities. And they thought this was one of them. Not a lot of oil here that I'm aware of. The big thing, around the corner will probably be cannabis, and as far as us getting that through the door, I thought we were a little bit further along, but I think everything's a little bit derailed right now. But we've also had some good legislation. The Capitol is 2 blocks away from us, and we try to be as open as possible to helping them kind of navigate the waters of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah, cannabis is definitely an interesting industry for sure. It's almost kind of funny that on the federal level, it's still classified in the same category as cocaine and other substances, and
Totally.
you barely bank with it. But crypto has already got approval to a degree for banking. So it's kind of funny how some of these things work. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, it's still hard. I mean, we've gone through multiple banks. So, it's interesting in how these kind of bank boards decide to either bring you on or allow you to bank with them or not. We had banked with one company, I won't name them, but for multiple years. And they all of a sudden decided, you know what, we're just pulling out of this. It's a little bit too risky for us. We don't really understand it. We thought we'd be able to spend more time on it. And I think it comes down to them thinking that the market was going to get bigger, right? Mm-hmm. They got in a little bit later. They probably came in as our banking partner in 2017, I think. And so, probably it's just different expectations on their end, and they were trying to be a little bit risky, and then they wanted to rein it in.
Right.
So we have seen that with banking partners. Of course, with cannabis, the great example right now is what Jack Mallers is doing with Strike, and their family with Bitcoin Mom has kind of a cannabis operation thing that they're doing, a store that they're trying to trial Strike in, and just use Lightning as kind of the payment rail on the back end. I think that's really, really interesting stuff. And I've got a number of friends who are in the cannabis industry, either from the media side or actually on the growing and operation side. And they are looking at Bitcoin, but it's kind of the same thing. They don't necessarily want to use Bitcoin, but they do want to have the properties of Bitcoin, right? And so trying to figure this out has just been really, really difficult. So I think maybe these kind of Lightning things like Strike may actually be a really great model for them.
Yeah, they definitely might. I know a lot of marijuana companies because I've grown up out on the West Coast, and they've definitely been very cannabis friendly for quite a while. But I mean, they still have the same issues with banking, and I know a lot of them have looked to crypto for being a potential solution to help circumvent their banking issues. So I'm sure that they're probably looking at similar solutions, and there's a lot of them out there at this point.
Yeah, for sure. It's a matter of time. I mean, it's obviously I'm pretty biased here, but I think that there's an inevitability that Bitcoin will find either complete dominance of the market, or it will find complete dominance of multiple smaller markets, of which cannabis could be one of those. Gambling prediction markets, prop bets on the stock market, whatever. I mean, there could be all kinds of different things there.
Yeah,
that are there.
It's very likely that one of these niche markets, really adopts Bitcoin at some point. I mean, it's been around for a while, so I wouldn't be overly surprised. From your perspective, have you guys had any banking issues? Being in the crypto industry?
No, I mean, other than our bank just deciding not to want to deal with us. I mean, it wasn't necessarily difficult. We had another bank that we've been using forever that picked us right back up. So it's really just hit or miss, and it depends. We've also preferred to use smaller banks and not deal with a Wells Fargo. Right? A lot of the Wells Fargo, right, does not have the greatest reputation as far as dealing with consumers and buying Bitcoin even, and is going as far as blocking transactions. So we don't want to support that, but we do want to support local banks and kind of get them up to speed with what's going on in the entire space.
Yeah, the two banks that I've constantly run into that have always had an issue with crypto have been Wells Fargo and Chase. I'm really not sure why, but it's just kind of always been that way. But it'll probably change pretty soon. Bank of America, US Bank have been very, very friendly, so I've tried to do business with them for quite a while.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna, personally, I think that things like going back to Strike for a second. All right, they were in this them and Last, but we've covered them both recently. They're in this kind of new Visa program to help bridge the gap between traditional banks and what we're doing with Bitcoin. And then you also have this kind of revolution going on with banking as a service happening at a Barclays or a BBVA. And especially like a lot of these, like a BBVA is not a giant bank in any way. Barclays is big, but like BBVA isn't. But if they can kind of do this banking as a service product, what they're going to be doing is really doing all the product management work for us on the Bitcoin side of saying, okay, well, yeah, API driven everything, online everything, mobile phone everything. Now, how do I just put Bitcoin into that? Right. And so I think we're going to meet in the middle with these two platforms at some point. And that's my bet on where we kind of converge with the traditional banking system would be through these kind of mid-tier banks, or it could be MasterCard, right? A little bit smaller than Visa. They're pretty open to banking as a service. They're looking at new products. They've got a really cool innovation team. Maybe that's somewhere they do, but Visa actually seems to have the upper hand right now. So we'll see. Lots of opportunities there to kind of work together down the road.
Yeah, tons of opportunities. Other than that, it could just be one of the big tech companies too, just buying a smaller bank or having a deal with a smaller bank, and then doing something linked to like what Twitter's done with Cash App's Cash Card, or what PayPal's working on, or just go the route of Coinbase. I mean, there's a lot of solutions there. We'll probably see it in the tech industry pop up a lot quicker than we will within the traditional banking system, but it'll be prevalent everywhere.
Yeah, there's tons of banks out there to buy. I mean, I've had friends be like, "Oh, I'm going to go buy a bank." Like, do what? Is that a thing that you can do? But it's all tech entrepreneurs who are saying, "All right, I need the proper licensing. I need a kind of a head start on this stuff. I don't want to deal with, bootstrapping a bank. It's just much cheaper to buy some of these smaller regional banks and grow from there." So it seems like a solid strategy to me.
Yeah, definitely. Before we jump into it even more, tell me a little bit about your backgrounds and kind of how you got to work with like Bitcoin Magazine, so like the audience can be a little bit more familiar with who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with BTC Inc., which is the parent company of Bitcoin Magazine, for a couple of years now. I got involved through kind of some of our other alternative projects, not necessarily Bitcoin Magazine, but I've been working with the magazine specifically for about a year and a half or so. My role here is I put webmaster on there, so I actually do manage the website, but also is one of the editors on the magazine. So a lot of the content that comes through is getting filtered through either my inbox or Peter Chihuahua, our managing editor, or Christian Krolis, who's our multimedia editor. And so together, the three of us kind of make up the direction of where we're taking Bitcoin Magazine. And then we'll also have, of course, Aaron Van Weerdem on the technical editing side as well.
Nice. Is the magazine your main product, or is it mostly digital at this point, or is it the website?
Yep. So BTC Inc. does a number of things. I've got an entire list. So the main product that most people know us for is Bitcoin Magazine. Bitcoin Magazine's been around, originally founded by Vitalik Buterin and Mihai Alis, both Ethereum co-founders, back in 2012. It was the first publication that focused on Bitcoin. That went for 22 print editions. It also was an online magazine as well. And then BTC Inc. started as Why Bitcoin, which is kind of a primer magazine for getting into Bitcoin. In 2015, we purchased the assets of Bitcoin Magazine and took over that responsibility. Since then, we've been publishing online. We've covered pretty much everything about Bitcoin that you probably could. Mm-hmm. Since we've been around since 2012, we really believe ourselves to be the historians of Bitcoin in a lot of ways. There's pretty much no topic that we haven't covered. We don't shy away from technical topics. So unlike other publishers who really focus on news, we are more of a magazine. We focus on kind of pushing agendas and topics forward and really lending our voice to other Bitcoiners as much as possible, rather than simply reporting on the news of the day. We think that space is really interesting, and we've done news over the years. We've also covered things that aren't Bitcoin before over the years, but for the past 2 years, we've been 100% Bitcoin focused. In addition to kind of Bitcoin Magazine, the number 2 product that everyone kind of knows us for is the Bitcoin Conference Series. So we brought that back for Bitcoin 2019. We were scheduled to do Bitcoin 2020 in March, but unfortunately couldn't have that. We were probably the first large conference to be canceled in San Francisco due to COVID. And we've been planning Bitcoin 2021, which will be April 30th through May 1st in Los Angeles of next year, which we're pretty pumped. Hopefully we get to put it on. But we've got already Tony Hawk is one of the keynote speakers. Nick Szabo is one of the keynote speakers. We've got a lot of great programming, and moving it down to LA for anyone who went to Bitcoin 2020 or 2019. It was kind of in this really cool old garage. It used to be a Honda dealership a number of years ago, but they turned it into an event space. In LA, I can't announce the venue just yet, but the
Oh,
place that
I think I know where that was. Actually, I
yeah,
almost
it's right
that one.
on Van Ness and Market.
Was that in San Fran?
Um, yeah, in San Francisco. Yep.
Okay.
It was a blue Honda dealership, if you remember that.
Familiar, yeah.
Yep. So moving it to LA, and we've got about 4 times the amount of space. So we're going to really make use of that, and excited to come south and hopefully have a little bit better weather. Really excited.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
then there's a number of other products that we do too, and I'm happy to go through those, but that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding Bitcoin 2019, 20, 2021, when you guys do it, like, what's it like mainly? Do you just bring in a bunch of speakers and do like a huge speaker series, or do you guys have like a focused agenda, or like how does it kind of operate?
Yeah, so we do go into it with some type of agenda. This year we're still pretty early in planning that, but obviously Taproot's probably the most important thing to be really thinking about. And then once Taproot is activated, what do we do with Taproot? And there's a bunch of really cool stuff that's coming out. We just had a great article Aaron did on payment pools. That's like one thing that's enabled by Taproot kind of getting activated. So pretty stoked about that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a lot of panels, keynotes. We had Edward Snowden was our keynote speaker for 2019. Tim Draper came and spoke as well. A bunch of really great stuff. And we also pride ourselves on the fact that we bring a ton of art to kind of the community. We think, Bitcoin it's a tool, right? At the end of the day, it's money. It's the hardest money we've ever seen. So it enables so much more stuff, right? It is not the end all be all. It's not, it's a means to the end, which is freedom, right? It's the ability to have sovereign money from the government. And so there is this kind of cultural aspect that we always want to be propping up. And so art is super important to us as well. We've got 2 great in-house graphic designers and artists, Pat and Tommy, who do tremendous work. And for like Bitcoin 2019, we brought in a guy, Greg Mike, who's a pretty well-known artist out of Atlanta who does graffiti. And he painted an entire wall mural for 2 days, and then we painted over it at the end, right? A lot of cool pictures. If you go look, it was up on the roof at 2019. So, we don't want to do just lectures, right? It's not just technical content. There is some of the higher level, how do we embed ourselves within, in the traditional banking system? How do we teach our parents and grandparents what's going on? How do we speak to the artist, right? Because Bitcoin is an important thing to get the message out about, and that's going to take a bunch of different mediums and a bunch of different directions, right? It's not going to be the same story working for everybody.
Right. And it's important to bring people together, at least once in a year, and, foster that community and, engage people, throw around ideas, educate people. Like, so there's probably the biggest issue out there is just so many people don't quite understand Bitcoin still to this day, like average people, or just aren't comfortable with it because the news has been back and forth on it. So yeah, doing these things is very, very important. So glad you guys do.
Yeah, thank you. It's probably the coolest thing that we do. And I think the way I describe it with 2019 is we had no idea it was going to be as cool as it was. Like, we're a bunch of Bitcoiners that wanted to put something together. We did it. And by the time we woke up from the dream that was happening, it was the coolest thing that we had ever put together. And so since then, I mean, it really invigorated us for 2020. We had entire streets shut down so Tony Hawk could come skateboard through there. We were doing all kinds of fun stuff, right? We had a circus rooftop that we were doing because it was going to be in March. So San Francisco, it's a little bit rainy at that period. So we were going to try to get our wrist there. So yeah, a lot of fun stuff we didn't get to do, but 21 is going to be great. And I'm pretty pumped for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is it safe to say that Tony Hawk hodls Bitcoin?
Yeah. So the big reason he's involved is because the Tony Hawk Foundation accepts Bitcoin, and he wanted to be a part of that. So they've been amazing to work with and super open, and Tony Hawk's been incredibly cool about it. Go figure, right?
Yeah, that's
He's
awesome.
the coolest guy ever.
Yeah, it really sounds like it. What were some of the other products that you're mentioning as well, other than the conference?
Yeah, so under the Bitcoin Magazine umbrella, we do a bunch of other stuff. So we have a number of podcasts that we do. We've also introduced a couple of new products there, like Technical Tuesdays. So recently, Rusty Russell just came and gave us a big rundown on what's going on with Lightning. We're doing unboxing reviews, AMA. So we did an AMA with Jack Mollers from Strike. We did an AMA with Zach Herbert from Foundation Devices. Here just recently, we've got bitcoinhalving.com, which is a website specifically on the halving with content from our 21-hour live stream that we did during the halving, which was amazing to produce. And we had hundreds of guests on that show over the 21 hours. Really, really cool stuff there. And we're also rolled out 2 new products. So one of them is called Carrot. It's earncarrot.com, which is a Lightning-enabled rewards marketplace. So we're kind of starting with Bitcoin Magazine rewards, but hopefully we'll get other brands involved on there as well. But the idea is you come in and do something that kind of helps build affinity for your brand and kind of builds our connection together as you as the consumer, and we'll pay you out in Lightning. So you can earn sats for doing things as simple as surveys, but also until just recently, we've had giving out 5 million sats to first-time contributors to Bitcoin Core. So if you had a PR that got accepted after July 1st, we were going to give you 5 million sats on that. We've recently been in touch with a lot of the folks from Core online. Some of it's public in Twitter, and some of it's private conversations. They didn't want to create too much spam, so we're looking kind of going back to the drawing board and seeing where we can add some different bounties to help add first-time contributors. Some of the we don't want to basically incentivize really small kind of trash commits to Core that are valuable in some way, but aren't really kind of unblocking some of the bigger stuff that's going on. And that's really what we want to do there. So that's Carrot at earncarrot.com. And then we just announced...
How do you spell carrot?
Carrot.
Okay.
Like the fruit or vegetable, whichever one that is.
Let's go with
vegetable. And then the next product that we just announced is Bitcoin Black Friday, which is something that used to exist, and we're kind of bringing that back too. That's kind of what we do, is bring back stuff from the dead a little bit. Bitcoin Black Friday historically has had thousands of merchants who accept Bitcoin or are selling Bitcoin related products in some way. And we have just started outreach for that. So if you're interested in joining us, if you're a merchant, because merchant adoption is so important to be pushing, that we're trying to get everybody to focus on that and how their friends who are merchants or, whatever it is to give a discount or something like that for people buying or selling in Bitcoin or Lightning there. So bitcoinblackfriday.com is that. And there's a sign up there on the website, not too much on the website just yet. We literally just launched that last week, I believe. And pretty pumped about it. So we're busy. I mean, we're all over the place. We've got a ton of different products.
It sounds like you're busy.
Yeah, and there's a dozen people. So for a dozen people to put on, a SaaS product, Bitcoin Black Friday, a conference, Bitcoin Magazine. We also have the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast network. So that's letstalkbitcoin.com. Some of the great shows like Peter McCormick's Let's Talk Bitcoin has been on there, 4 Minute Crypto, Tatiana's show. There's a bunch of different shows on there. And we do the videos. We put out 50 videos in the past month on our YouTube channel. So a lot of content, a lot of stuff about Bitcoin. It's all about Bitcoin. If you like Bitcoin, you probably should like us. If you're not following us on Twitter, if you're not doing all that, you got to go do that. You're insane if you're not. Yeah,
guys, you got to make sure you do that at this point. The Bitcoin Black Friday thing sounds pretty cool. I need to take a look at that. Maybe I can.
It's something we're thrilled with it. So John Holmquist was running it before. we decided to take it over and kind of run with it. The merchant adoption is just so important, right? And if you're not currently integrating with Bitcoin, there's great options out there. Of course, there's the open source favorite with BTC Pay Server. BitPay has a strong product still. OpenNote has a great product. We've used them before for our ticket flow for the conference. So, and there's a number of other payment processors out there. I won't go through everybody.
What's the easiest one to use? Because I know there's a lot of merchants out there that, you know, they want to do it, but they have trouble, you know, understanding like the knowledge necessary to set it up and do it. Is there one that's fairly streamlined?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your POS and where you're accepting. So if let's say you're doing a simple online store like through WordPress and WooCommerce, pretty easy to get started with BTC Pay Server. Honestly, there's a lot of tutorials out there. That team is so incredibly helpful. It's kind of crazy. It's a team that goes by a lot of pseudonyms and seems a little bit scary sometimes, but they are the nicest team out there. They're always willing to help. They're out there in their chat channels. They're out there on Twitter. I always want to be supportive of what they're doing. And so I definitely would rep them if you're doing something as simple as that. And I think that's probably the majority of sites or some configuration that, or maybe a Shopify, which there's options for that as well. OpenNote is also pretty easy. I've done that hands-on too, and been pretty excited by what they provide. And they got some new stuff too. They've got like ACH banking and some other new features. We haven't covered it in the magazine, but they've told us about it. Again, we kind of stay away from some of the newsy type stuff, but we're always watching the kind of the market and trying to test stuff out.
Gotcha.
What about that's one of the reasons we built Carrot, is we just want to play with Lightning more often. A couple of us are engineers. I'm a software engineer by trade, so we want to be as hands-on as possible.
What do you think about Lightning? I know it's been growing tremendously. The last time I really paid attention to it was late 2019, but it's grown tremendously in popularity and it's very effective. Do you think it's something that could really, help Bitcoin be used as a payment method?
Yeah, I think we're seeing innovative use cases that I mentioned earlier. Strike and they're just using Lightning as a payment rail. I think that's a really innovative use case. We actually did a technical Tuesday on discrete log contracts and some of the stuff that it enables. I won't go through all that. It's a little bit too technical and detailed, but I'm of the thought personally that Lightning will be the backbone kind of for the next internet. It's really powerful. It's not just sending small amounts of sats, right? Juggernaut, Sphinx, right? There's chat messaging, right? Where they're basically sending like one sat messages around. That's really, really neat. So if we can kind of start packaging, interesting signature schemes together and not just thinking of Lightning as sending sats, I think we'll kind of see that it can be the backbone for kind of a better internet that's, based on privacy. It's being sent around through Tor, right? And also has money baked in. Of course, that's Bitcoin. And I think that's going to be really cool. So it's just going to take more time than everybody's wanting to spend on it. Lightning is very hard. Lightning Labs has released some new cool products. Lightning Terminal just came out. Lightning Loop is really cool to help with channel rebalancing. We use those products internally for, or products similar to that, maybe for Carrot. So it's got some room to grow for sure. It's not the back end of Lightning is not for the faint of heart, but the end user will never have to deal with that at the end of the day anyways. They'll scan a QR code. They'll send sats. They'll send a QR code. They'll send a message.
Yeah, the end user part of it has been pretty good from my perspective, at least. I remember early 2019, they had a thing, they might still have it, where you could buy Domino's pizza with Bitcoin through the Lightning network. I remember doing that. It was the coolest thing ever. I just opened up my wallet. I just clicked on the little app to do it, ordered a pizza, and I was stunned that you could do it that way. But yeah, there's a lot they can do with that. I'm very excited to see how they scale that up, and like from the user end, what people are going to be able to do with it.
Yeah, tons of different teams working on various implementations of Lightning, and again, it's these kind of more experimental things like what Jack is doing with Strike, what Juggernaut's doing, or Sphinx as far as messaging, that I'm super excited for. I think that there's just a lot of use cases that we haven't gotten anywhere near because we're so early on this. Mm-hmm. And Lightning, I think, just hasn't gotten as much attention. I think we covered a lot at Bitcoin Magazine. I think I'm biased, but the seminal pieces on Lightning exist on Bitcoin Magazine. So if you're not familiar with Lightning, go check it out. There's a lot of great stuff on there. But yeah, it's just going to take a little bit of time, and I think more developers getting involved with Lightning, and not just thinking it's money, but thinking, oh wow, this is a completely new tool that's available to us that does use Bitcoin, but is not completely focused on money.
Gotcha. I mean, how can developers get involved with building out Lightning? Like, do you know where they could go?
Yeah, I mean, any of the Lightning products, it's definitely the way to start. This is another group of people, just like I was talking about with BTC
right.
Pay Server. They're pretty wide open. The Lightning IRCs and email lists and all that kind of good stuff is the way to go. So if you're a developer, I think it's pretty normal how you'd start out as far as contributing on any open source project, but that's definitely the way to do it, is go through and catch up with some of those email lists and IRC chats. And just getting it running in the first place. If you're running Raspberry Blitz or a MyNode BTC server and any kind of stuff, all of them come with Lightning enabled. All of them have Tor enabled. So go spin up one of those nodes, start playing with it, start looking under the hood a little bit, and getting familiar with some of the terminology. It is a little bit different. There are specific terms to Lightning that you got to get familiar with, but it's the probably same amount of learning curve as anything else that's as technical as what we're dealing with.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to refer that to some of my friends. I know they'd be interested in getting involved in that area of Bitcoin as well. In terms of when you guys publish something, do you guys like to focus on the technical aspect, or do you go for a more opinionated approach? Like what's your method before you publish something, or do you do both, or like what kind of things are you putting out there?
Yeah, so opinions, I do like opinions. First and foremost, what we want to do is make sure that we're adding to the story of Bitcoin and kind of pushing it forward. So we are opinionated. All of us have an opinion somewhere on how do we activate Taproot, for instance. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we try not to share our direct opinions too much. So sometimes we'll write articles, like Aaron will write articles, but they're going to be pretty factual, pretty technical. I write some stuff, but when I write stuff, it's going to be news or a review or something like that. I don't really get into my specific interpretation of how we should go about activating soft forks. But what we do want to do is enable those conversations. So for example, Bitcoin Independence Day, we did a 6-hour live stream. We did 3 debates, and the first debate was specific on how do we activate how do we activate Taproot, or more generally, how do we go about doing user activated soft forks? And we had Luke Dasher and Eric Lombrazzo come kind of debate that and talk it out a little bit with Aaron as the moderator. And that was a really, really cool conversation, because you're going to see, kind of the difference of opinions there. And we want to facilitate that conversation and not really pick too many sides in that battle. So going back to 2017 and SegWit, we had an opinion. We wrote about everybody's opinion. We definitely, I think it was pretty obvious the way we were pushing it. We didn't really shy away from it, but we didn't really make a hard statement or plant a flag in the ground, and we'll try to avoid that as much as possible. That said, we don't talk about Bitcoin Cash. We don't talk about Bitcoin Unlimited. We don't talk about Bitcoin XT. We don't talk about a lot of these things. We don't talk about yams. Yams are pretty popular today. So we have covered that stuff in the past, but anything that's non-Bitcoin related definitely has a little bit of a higher threshold to kind of get written about. So that would generally be maybe something around stable coins, because they're obviously still pretty important to the Bitcoin ecosystem, and central bank digital currencies, still pretty important of what's going on. So even Libra would fall under that. Although, Libra is not Bitcoin, it's not a cryptocurrency at all. The regulation, the scrutiny that Libra is going through, what they're doing to kind of navigate their waters, I think it is important, because it's going to teach us some lessons in some way for the Bitcoin community. So that's it. And at the end of the day, we just kind of make a judgment call. There's a couple of us. We do the best we can, and we try not to cloud everybody's feed with non-Bitcoin content as much as possible.
Right. And that makes sense too. But even things like Libra, I mean, they do kind of shape the waters a little bit in some ways for Bitcoin, potentially in a positive or negative light, just because Facebook's so big. So I imagine it's something that's worth talking about.
Yep, for sure. And here's a cool one though. Like at the same time as, I guess last year as Libra was really kind of hitting its stride, Uber also released a kind of new product where they called it Uber Wallet, which was the ability to get paid on demand. Basically, they knew you're going to keep driving, so we'll allow you to instantly withdraw money so you can buy gas for your car, right? If you're in the middle of your day, rather than having to front your gas for it. Stripe does something similar where they're fronting money to businesses based on their accounts receivable. So the fact though that Uber and Libra, they're all calling these things wallets. Like wallet is probably one of my least favorite terms in Bitcoin in general. But the fact that terminology is picking up and we're influencing the giant tech companies as well, it's a sign that we are intertwined. We are together, right? And so we have to be paying attention to what they're doing. Even though Uber isn't calling what they're doing, their settlement, a cryptocurrency, why wouldn't they want to use Lightning on the back end to help settlement and move that money around, right? Especially from an international perspective.
Right.
And that's going to be these conversations that start happening at these kind of corporate levels of, we don't actually have to hold Bitcoin. We can just use Bitcoin, right? Potentially. And I think that'll be some fun conversation. So we got to pay attention. And yeah, Libra, for sure, we got to pay attention to it. I think it's a net positive over a net negative personally. It gets people thinking about stuff. And, if Facebook decided, that they wanted to really kind of push down on it, they would. I think Facebook has made, and Uber both actually have made an entire business over moving faster than the government can. So for them to hold back the reins a little bit, is only out of design. It's not because they don't want to or they can't. They could blast through these regulations as fast as they wanted to, and the government can never catch up. But I think they've learned their lessons from maybe the past previous years, and
I think there's a lot of truth.
Things.
There's a lot of truth to that, especially with Uber too. I love Uber, so I'm not saying anything bad about them, but they're a very sneaky company. Not in a bad way, also innovative in a sneaky way. Just taking like the Latin market, for example, there's tons of huge cab unions and everything that have really pushed back against Uber for quite a while, and Uber will reform in that country as a smaller company under Uber it'll be called the same thing. They'll just like change a letter or something, and they'll reshape their laws to find a loophole in the local laws for the city or for that government so that they can operate. They've done that in Colombia. They've done that in Argentina. I remember they went as far as accepting Bitcoin for Uber rides in Argentina back in like 2018 because no one wanted to take dollars because of their currency crashed like 40%. Or no one wanted to take pesos, excuse me. They only wanted dollars or Bitcoin. So they've been very, very flexible in a lot of ways. But a lot of props to them for being that creative. And then Facebook, on the other hand, they're just out innovating. I mean, the government's ability to put out any type of regulation at this point. They're going way too fast. So I wouldn't be surprised if, Bitcoin starts getting integrated into big companies like this pretty soon. There's not even a lot of laws out to regulate Bitcoin, honestly, even in the US at this point.
Yep, totally. I'm of the boat that this is an inevitability, that this is the best money that can be out there. And of course, yesterday we had MicroStrategy picking up 0.1% of the entire supply of Bitcoin, right, for their reserves. So, I mean, that kind of news is, it's only going to accelerate from here. I think that we have kind of hit this sweet spot of post-halving apocalyptic relations in the United States, with everybody freaking out from the virus or from a riot. And we've entering in a political election that has no winners, in my opinion. And I think that nobody can plan 6 months out in advance. So it's a little bit YOLO right now. And that means people are open to alternative answers for what we can do to build better economies and build strength. So now is the time. I hope everybody is, talking to their friends again and kind of putting Bitcoin out there in the best light. But I think more and more people will just kind of keep flocking to us because the government and kind of the situations that we're in globally from this pandemic have really just going to push people to us naturally. It's going to be a kind of a great time here, hopefully soon, especially with the halving. You reduce the supply at the same time. It's just, you couldn't wish for anything better. It's a perfect storm.
Yeah, I feel like some of that stuff psychologically still hasn't really kicked in yet. And I know historically some of that has taken a time, half a year for it to really for that threshold to be hit with people. But I mean, since the lockdown globally with the pandemic, Bitcoin and most other cryptos have performed very, very well. I think that also helps solidify it as as an alternative asset class, and Bitcoin is potentially as a store of value or potential future payment form of money over the internet. And I think that really helps validate it. But as we go through and get close to the election and the end of 2020, and who else knows what's going to happen this crazy year. What do you think the outlook looks like for Bitcoin at this point? Do you think Bitcoin's going to actually take off and start reaching much higher numbers, based on the halving, based on daily trade volume and popularity, or do you think it's going to actually start stabilizing? What do you think's more likely, I guess?
Yeah, we had a great conversation, a little bit of a roundabout to this about KYC and is it going to kill Bitcoin or not? And Ragnar was on one end of this saying, I don't give a shit if nobody uses Bitcoin, but there's a couple of people and they learn it the hard way and they all earn Bitcoin and, we're all miners, right? As long as we have it, then we're fine. And we don't need KYC, kind of this purist mentality. And I understand that and identify with that in some way. And then we had Parker Lewis from Unchained Cap looking at it and saying, you know what? We need as many people as possible, right? KYC is, it's a speed bump. It's not the end of the world. There are rules that we got to play by, and that's completely okay. And sacrificing adoption, the speed of adoption is probably an okay thing. So I'm probably in the boat that we've got a bunch of people sitting at home. We've got a bunch of people who are desperate to make money because they don't have jobs. I think we've got a bunch of people who can't gamble on sports and just nuked Robinhood. Cryptocurrency is something that they've heard about in a lot of cases, specifically Bitcoin, because that's still going to be your household brand name. And if the price goes up, then I think it's just inevitable that these people will follow and start learning about it again. And we go through the same exact cycle of 2016 and 2017. And probably a big bust at the end too, right? I think that's just kind of how it works, right? Someone's always going to be late to that party. And someone was already early to the party and needs to get out. So I think we'll see the same thing again. I don't know why we wouldn't. And even if it didn't happen and we ended up with, a small subset of people who were trading and using Bitcoin for another 10 years behind the scenes, I think that it's still only going to be a stronger product by then. And then at that point, we'll have to look at this and say, all right, is it inevitable now? And we'll come to it. I just don't see where Bitcoin regresses technically from where we are now. I don't think we get loose with the code. I don't think we introduce new vulnerabilities. I don't think we start getting wild. The maximalists are, doing a great job at keeping Bitcoin very focused. I just don't see where it goes away. I can see where maybe there's another set of use cases that come on for things that aren't money, right? There's a lot of cryptocurrencies or projects out there that talk about being money that they aren't. Of course, this week's conversation, or I guess last week's conversation, fled into this one. Is calculating the actual supply, right, on Ethereum. It's those kind of things that make Ethereum not money. I like the idea of DeFi. But they really kind of bring us back into the system that we already have that exists with fiat. And that's kind of the stuff that we're trying to avoid. If we have the first provably scarce asset in the world, why not double into that? And I get that it can seem boring, but if you go and look at what's actually happening inside of Core and what's actually happening inside of Lightning, and what is going to get enabled from a privacy side with Taproot, those three things are clutch. They're just massive. So there's not a developer. If you're a developer right now and you think that you got to go use a smart contract to go build something to go do this thing, then I think you're not looking critically hard enough at what's going on in Bitcoin. And I think that you should at least spend some time with us and try to figure out how you can help. This revolution will be driven by Bitcoin. It will not be driven by Ethereum or Tron or name whatever else the other things are. Right? I don't keep up as much.
Right. Well, there's a lot out there. It's hard to keep up with everything.
Yeah, totally. I think that's cool. I think it's cool to experiment. I'm not. We're Bitcoin first. I'm Bitcoin first, right? I'm not against people experimenting with these things. It's not money though. They're solving different problems, right? World computer problems, I'm all into, right? I think that's really, really cool. And I think that some of the mechanics from like proof of stake are interesting. I think they should be tried out. Let's see if it works. I don't think that proof of stake would work well in a Bitcoin environment, right? The centralization factor there, the fact that the exchanges are now going to be kind of the big stick in the room, right? At the end of the day, I think that's a problem, to be honest. I like the fact that I can run a node on Bitcoin and I am the big stick along with everybody else who runs a node. Obviously, the previous history proves that it's not the miners, it is the people running the nodes and agreeing to the rules there. So, I'm excited for them. I see it as a different class of problems. It's like a different food group.
Absolutely. And I find it really hard to see Bitcoin regressing in really any way at this point. Like it's very possible, you know, that it runs up in price, has a big crash, go through another bubble cycle. I mean, that's probably going to happen indefinitely, multiple times for quite a while. But, you know, in terms of like its adoption and its popularity, it's grown so much at this point, has really validated itself as at least as an asset. I really don't see how much it could actually regress other than governments taking a really hardline stance, and actually the opposite is happening. You know,
Yeah.
in places like China too, like very controlled places like China, you have courts ruling in favor of Bitcoin holders, and you have government trying to produce their own cryptocurrency. So, I mean, even in a contentious crypto, you know, state, something like that, I mean, you're even seeing development. So I don't see it going backwards.
No, and so the only attack that, or sorry, the attack that I'd be worried about would be the government accepting Bitcoin for taxes and then not accepting coins they deem as tainted, right? So if they go through some analysis and say, oh, this was used in drug trade and you've got some of these coins, right, then you can't use that. Of course, that eventually every coin will be touched by drug trade, right, or something illicit. But if they try to destroy that fungibility, but accept it at the same time, I think it's like a double-edged sword, right? It's like good, all right, great. It's some type of confirmation that what we're doing is really great, but bad because they're going to kind of bleed us out a little bit. I think that that's a potential attack vector, but otherwise, you know, I think we're good. I think it'll have the potential to become a reserve currency for either businesses or a market or something like that. I don't know that we'll ever get to, you know, USD levels necessarily. I hope we do. But it's okay. It's part of the journey and it's part of the ride. And I think Bitcoin is adaptable and set up for success already to withstand a lot of these attacks. And, you know, every attack we have seen, let's say, like take it from China or India or the United States government or New York, right? As far as even a bit license, like these little microaggressions against Bitcoin, what have they done? Nothing, right? We're still here. We're still doing it. It's only growing. There's only more people using it. And technically it's only getting stronger at the end of the day. And we're getting more abilities. So, you know, it's early for sure, but I don't see how we regress at all. And I don't see what they're going to do.
Yeah, Bitcoin's very inevitable. And I think a lot of people, organizations, governments have realized that probably by this point, if they haven't earlier. And it's a beautiful piece of decentralized software. So it's not going anywhere anyways, even if it did regress a little bit. But it's a fun journey to watch and be a part of. And that's probably a good place to end it too, because I do got to run in a minute. But Flip, thank you for taking the time to come on and everything. Awesome conversation. I think a lot of people will enjoy learning a little bit more about, you know, some journalism in the space and you know, what you guys are doing at Bitcoin Magazine. Oh, and like, where can people find you guys? Like, where are you guys on social media? It's btcmagazine.com.
No, Bitcoin Magazine at Bitcoin Magazine. Already around 600,000 people are following us, so come join us if you're not already watching.
Okay.
And if you're interested in the conference, it's b.tc/conference. It's a little bit longer. B.tc is a domain that we're kind of starting to put some new products under that aren't necessarily Bitcoin Magazine focused, but are there for Bitcoiners. And if you're creating content or you want to create content or you want to help produce content, give me a shout. editor@bitcoinmagazine.com is my email address. And I will do my best to try to get you helping in some way. We don't have that many content creators on the team. We really do kind of want to facilitate the larger, you know, Bitcoiners supporting other Bitcoiners. So if you got an opinion or something like that, there's probably a podcast we can put you on. If you've got, you know, something cool you want to show off technical, come see me on Technical Tuesdays. We'll get you on there. And then another really great show that we've done on Thursdays, every Thursday, is Drinks in Quarantine. And that's kind of a general conversation with about a half dozen, maybe 10 people that CK runs. And man, there's an episode last week was meme warfare. It was pretty fun. And the week before that was all about mining. And if you're like, not to belabor this, but Bitcoin Magazine, we can focus on mining different than other publications because we're focused on Bitcoin, right? We don't have to worry about the news. We can do that kind of stuff. So go watch that mining episode. It's unbelievable what these guys are doing. They're like the Illuminati of Bitcoin, like behind the scenes. Especially
what was the podcast called? Drinking in Quarantine, or
Drinks in Quarantine. So you can find that on our YouTube channel. But also we throw up all of our videos on bitcoinmagazine.com too. So go up there and you can get to the YouTube channel pretty easily.
Perfect. Guys, go check it out. Hit them up. Awesome. I'll throw some links in the description as well so they can easily find some of this stuff.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. And thanks for taking the time to come on. Really appreciate it. Have a great day, man.
All right. Take it easy.